Hi, welcome to another episode here on Creepy with Coffee. First of all, I guess like the previous episode, I wanted to apologize for not being able to produce content, read stories or read stories. And it has been quite some time. It really has been quite some time because due to work, and it has been a really crazy few months, and also due to some personal stuff as well. To compensate, I would read you guys 3 stories that I have gotten, one from Facebook and the other 2 from other websites. Well, today's story, I kind of like put it in the theme of the other realm or being from the other realm. So for those watching for the first time, if you do not know, I'm Malaysian. So as part of Asia countries, there are a lot of us actually believes in something what the Westerner will call elves, or in our part of the world, we will call it Bunian. Well, that is on story number 2-3. But as of now, I will tell you first story, which is a story about the person who wrote this. He had an experience of traveling into another realm. So before we begin with our story for today, if those who have yet to subscribe, I would really appreciate it if you can. And thank you so much for the 800 of you guys who had already subscribed to the channel. And, well, let's go.
This is Creepy with Coffee.
Hello everyone and good evening. Today I wanted to share a story of my first experience entering the supernatural realm. The supernatural realm I'm referring to is the spirit world, where all deceased people go. At the time, I was only 18 years old and very curious about a lot of things. The story begins when I was actually casually chatting with a friend named Jason. When I told Jason that I wanted to know what it felt like to, explore the spirit world, and I wanted to have a look at what the other side is like, because it sparked my curiosity even more. To give you some context, I had visited Jason's house before, and I had seen that his late grandfather, whom I will refer to here as Uncle Pao, was a Taoist practitioner who performed rituals for people seeking help. Just for context, a Taoist practitioner here is usually sometimes referred to as a medium. So sometimes they will transcend deity to help people who seek help from deities. So back to the part where I asked Jason about the spirit world. Jason told me he didn't know much about it as he had never tried it himself. But he said if I really wanted to know, I could come over and meet Uncle Pao, which is the grandfather. Hearing this, I got excited and agreed to visit the very next day since it was a school holiday. The next morning around 10 a.m., I went to Jason's house. Coincidentally, only Jason and the grandfather, Uncle Pao, were home since Jason's parents were out. After some small talk, I told Jason about my intention. Jason and I then went to meet Uncle Pao, who was sitting in the living room reading a newspaper. Jason explained to Uncle Pao that I wanted to experience exploring the spirit world just as he had done for other visitors a few months ago. Uncle Pao listened and then stared at me seriously. I remember him saying something like, "Do you think entering the spirit world is like going on a vacation abroad? If you hear noises at my door, don't worry, that is not the spirit, that is just my cat. Those who came to me before sought help to find lost spirits kidnapped by supernatural beings. Do you understand?" He said this in Chinese, so this is a translated, but roughly it meant like that. Despite Uncle Pao's words, I insisted on my intention to enter the spirit world. After hearing my persistent pleas, Uncle Pao finally agreed. Without wasting time, Uncle Pao directed me to a special room where he usually performed rituals for his visitors. Jason accompanied me while Uncle Pao prepared some equipment and materials for the ritual. Once everything was ready, I was asked to sit down and the ritual began. Before starting, Uncle Pao warned me not to follow anyone inviting me to their home because it could be a malevolent spirit trying to trap me in that world. He also told me that I had only 30 minutes. 30 minutes and that's all. And before time was up, he would ring a bell. When I heard the bell, I needed to head towards the sound, which is the bell sound. Uncle Pao then gave me a talisman paper for protection during my exploration in the spirit world. During the ritual, my eyes were covered with a talisman paper, and Uncle Pao chanted mantras. In the darkness, I could hear Uncle Pao's chanting. Gradually, his voice faded away, and when I opened my eyes, I found myself still in the same room, but neither Uncle Pao nor Jason was there. The room was dimly lit, and there was no wind, as if everything was still. I checked my body, and everything seemed normal, with the talisman still in my pocket. I then began to explore and walk towards the room to see what was outside. As I opened the door, I was surprised to see an old concrete corridor, which was obviously not outside of the room that I was initially in. I walked slowly through the dimly lit hall when I suddenly saw a black dog watching me from a distance. As I courageously approached the black dog, it transferred into a horrifying face and stood on its hind legs, ready to chase me. I ran in the opposite direction, searching for a safe place. As I looked back, the black dog, now running like a human, was still behind my back. After a desperate escape, I found a door. I quickly entered and locked it. In the dark room, I pressed my ear against the door and listened for the black dog outside. After some time, I slowly opened the door to check if the creature had already left. When I was sure it was gone, I stepped out cautiously and suddenly heard the bell ringing. Remembering Uncle Pao's instructions, I ran towards the sound. The closer I got, the brighter the light became until I saw a glowing door. I felt relieved knowing I was about to return to my world. Just before I reached the door, the black dog reappeared, charging at me with terrifying speed. Panicking, I sprinted towards the door. As the creature was about to grab me, the talisman in my pocket emitted a burst of light, burning the creature and throwing it away from me. I then ran through the door and walked up to Uncle Pao, ringing the bell and removing the talisman from my face. I was sweating, and Jason asked if I was okay. I said I was fine and noticed it was already noon. Uncle Pao said what I had just experienced was just the first level of the spirit world. From that day until Uncle Pao passed away, the experience remained vivid in my memory. So that was the first story, where the person who wrote this story actually traveled and explored the other world or the other realm. So if you were given an opportunity to do so, would you? Well, let us know down in the comment section below. Now on to the next story. The next story is about an angler who loves fishing, and this is a story that he actually experienced when he went fishing with his bunch of friends. And this is about entering the other realm, the realm of the Bunian. I like to share a terrifying experience I had while fishing with 3 friends. According to others who had been there before, the river was teeming with various species, including catfish, lampam, and sebarau. So I do not know what is lampam and sebarau here is. For those who are anglers who are more into fishing, probably you can let me know what kind of fish are these. Besides fishing, we also plan to set traps to catch wild chickens, often seen in the nearby forest. The journey to our dream spot took nearly 2 hours on foot from the parking area. After sweating it out and hauling our camping gear, we finally found a strategic spot. We immediately set up our tent and prepared bait to start our hunting mission. I've always loved the casting method, regardless of the fish species. The thrill of sebarau striking the lure, it's something I find truly amazing. I think the casting method here is something whereby you cast and then immediately you reel it in, instead of you cast and you wait for the fish to take the bite. So this is just another method among anglers. So that evening, the atmosphere was lively as we fished. Our dinner menu would surely feature catfish in sour broth, which is actually asam, and grilled sebarau dipped in soy sauce with chilies. I mean, reading the stories itself is already enough to Yeah, it felt worth the long trek into the forest, finding a great spot and casting among the wooden debris to catch 1 to 2 kilo of sebarau. I felt like a sharpshooter. That night, it drizzled lightly. The four of us decided to rest in the tent. However, one of my friends, Asmadi, not his actual name, known as Madi Ayam, decided to set traps to catch wild chickens, which were said to be plentiful there. Well, Madi Ayam translated it's to chicken Madi, so don't have to explain the name. Another friend, Ideal, planned to join Madi. Sharil, who was sleeping beside me, had long been snoring after devouring 3 plates of rice thanks to the catfish stew. I was the only one still wide awake since Madi and Ideal left the tent about half an hour ago. I tried to get comfortable, tossing and turning to fall asleep, but I was nowhere near drowsy. Eventually, I sat cross-legged in the tent, enviously eyeing Sharil, who was still snoring soundly. I thought to myself, even a bomb exploding wouldn't wake him up after gorging on that catfish stew. And faintly, I heard the sound of people talking. I strained my ears to listen more closely. Yes, I'm very, very sure. It is very near, outside our tent. It sounded like a lively gathering was taking place. I heard children running and shouting, women chatting and laughing. It was all clear to my ears. At that moment, the hair on my neck stood on end. My blood felt like it stopped flowing and my body began to feel cold. I hesitated, unsure whether to step out of the tent or stay frozen inside. I looked over at my friend Sharil, still sleeping peacefully. I didn't even consider waking him up to accompany me outside to check what was happening. Everything felt blurry to me, but following a strong inner urge, I decided to step out and have a look. As soon as I unzipped the tent, an extraordinary sight unfolded before me. I was now standing beside a beautifully decorated wedding tent. There was a stunning bridal stage adorned with woven palm leaves and fresh red and yellow flowers. However, the seating inside the tent, roofed with palm leaves, consisted only of round cut logs. 5 or 6-year-old children were running joyfully around the tent. Suddenly, "Assalamualaikum, my friend." A gentle tap on my shoulder came from behind. I was a bit startled. A man with a white robe, neatly wrapped in a turban with a clear, radiant face, extended his hand to greet me, which I accepted with a return of his greeting. "Please enjoy the food," he said. "Don't worry. Everything is halal and under Allah's protection," he said with a smile, holding a moving prayer bead in his hand. "Don't worry, you and your friends are safe here as long as you don't disturb our area," the man added, as if answering the question that had crossed my mind. He then led me to sit inside the tent and enjoyed the rice, delicious meat dishes, and even some ulam or plants that I didn't recognize. After my stomach was full, I asked for permission to leave. The man agreed after we shook hands and he hugged me tightly. He smelled wonderfully fragrant, like he was wearing an attar oil. I walked back, following the fog that suddenly appeared, as if I know where to go. As soon as the fog cleared, I was back near my tent. That is when I saw my 3 friends busy searching for something. That is when I asked, "What you guys looking for?" And suddenly, Sharil, seeing me, rushed over and hugged me with his teary eyes. So did Madi and Ideal. It felt like they haven't seen me for years. I asked, "What's going on?" Then my friend Madi asked, "Do you know how long have you been gone away from the tent?" I shook my head. To my recollection, it wasn't more than an hour, maximum an hour. Ideal pressed, "Do you know what time it is now?" I shook my head again, feeling this. "It is already 3 in the afternoon then. Where did you go last night?" Madi questioned me again. I was shocked to hear Madi's answer. Our tent was already packed, along with other gears. In less than 15 minutes, we had left the spot where we had caught the sebarau and catfish. Only in the car did I share the strange experience I had. Truly, in this world, there are still unseen realms that only those chosen can experience. So, to fellow anglers, you guys have any experience similar like this, whereby you were invited to attend some ceremony that, wasn't happening in our actual world? If yes, again, I would really appreciate it if you could send it to my email or drop it down below in the comment section. Now, for the final story for this episode would be something related to the previous story, whereby the previous story is about our angler friend who actually went into the Bunian world, and this one is actually something related to our Bunian friends as well. And this is the story. This story took place when I was studying in Selangor in the 2007 intake. The campus had just been completed, so all the infrastructure looked modern and nothing seemed scary. As usual, new students were given the privilege of staying in the domes. Our hostel was like a 4-story apartment with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Luckily, we got the first floor, although I couldn't remember the block, so it wasn't too tiring to go up and down the stairs. There were 6 people in each unit, with 2 people per room. I was paired with Anna, not her real name, who was actually my cousin. The incident happened during the first semester, and it was during the fasting month. My room with Anna was next to the kitchen. The other 2 rooms were opposite ours, so if we opened our door, we could directly see the other 2 rooms. Anna and I always closed our door before sleeping to keep the mosquitoes out. Our housemate in front of the room, Ira and Nurul, never closed their door, probably out of fear. Before going to sleep, Ira would always turn on the TV, which had a Quran recitation program playing until dawn. She would leave the TV on in the living room until we woke up for sahur. I could faintly hear the Quran recitation as I drifted off to sleep. And suddenly, this one fine morning, Ira asked me and Anna, "Did either of you wake up to recite along the TV?" Anna and I immediately answered, "No." Apparently, Ira had heard what sounded like 2 or 3 people reciting along the voice of the TV. I wasn't too surprised because I thought maybe the program featured a group recitation, but Ira insisted that it was just one voice off the TV and somebody else recite together in our living room. Since it was Ramadan, I didn't want to think too much about it. After that, strange things began to happen once we all went to our rooms to sleep or study. The most frequent occurrence was the sound of chairs and tables being moved between 1 to 4 a.m. I assume it was just students in the room above us who were studying late, students. So they were moving their chairs, but my instinct told me the sound was actually coming from our very own living room and not upstairs. Then there were sounds of doors opening and closing. I thought maybe one of my housemates had just returned late. I keep on coming up with all these reasons and answers. I tried to reassure myself with all these thoughts. Since my room was next to the kitchen, I often hear sounds like someone cooking, stirring a spoon in a cup, washing dishes, the wok, the pot. It couldn't have been my housemates because they wouldn't be doing all of that in the dark. Normally, there would be some light visible through the cracks in the door, but there was none. Usually when I hear all these sounds, it was completely dark. I didn't want to make a fuss and scare the others, so I kept quiet. I kept telling myself that it was Ramadan, so it couldn't be any ghost. Are you sure? What I heard was probably just my imagination, or maybe it was the students upstairs. Again, with the students upstairs. Before we left for Eid break, or Raya break, marking the end of the first semester, all 6 of us were chatting since we had no classes and spent most of our time hanging out in our living room. Then Ira mentioned that he had once seen a dark, shadowy figure in front of my room's door. We all widened our eyes in shock. Ira continued her story. She had seen it one night before going to sleep. Since she slept with the door open, the shadow passed through her open door and into my room, disappearing as it moved towards the kitchen. We all tried to convince Ira that it was just her imagination because after all, again, it was Ramadan and there were no ghosts. But deep down, I felt it might be related to the strange things that I had been hearing. We quickly changed the topic, not wanting to dwell on it. Then we all returned to our hometowns for the 8 and 3-week semester break. Now the second semester began. All my housemates, including my cousin Anna, had returned early in the morning. I arrived later. You won't believe what happened. At the entrance of my room, Anna found some sand sprinkled across the door. She told me about it after she had already swept it away. Then there was a long straight hair scattered on the floor of our room. I cleaned the room thoroughly before we left, so it couldn't be our hair. Another strange thing was there was an used oil poured down the drain in our bathroom. The other four shared the other bathroom. Anna had already cleaned that up too. If I arrived first, I don't know how would I have reacted to all of that. You see, we were away and the house was empty, so who would pour the used oil down the drain? And at night, Anna asked a relative from our village to look into what was happening. However, the answer we got didn't satisfy us. Maybe they didn't want to scare us since we were still young. I immediately called my mum and told her everything that had happened, asking her to contact our neighbor, Encik Zainal, who was known for his ability to treat various illnesses and see other realms. My mum then gave him my full name and he looked into what was going on. When my mum told me everything in detail because she knew I was a strong-willed lady, I found out that my room was actually inhabited by Bunian, the supernatural beings. Yes, Bunian. Their home was elegantly built under my study table and connected to my single bed. According to what was revealed, there was a married couple with 2 children living there. They were Muslims, and the wife wore a purdah, indicating they were a pious family. The space under the table was where the children played. Fortunately, I never stepped on them, otherwise who knows what might happen to me. A living room of our hostel was actually the Bunian family's restaurant. So the mysterious sounds of cooking, making drinks, washing dishes were explained. It makes sense since they ran the restaurant and those were the sounds of them cooking, taking orders and preparing drinks. The oil that Anna found in our bathroom was the leftover oil from their cooking. They probably didn't have time to clean up since they didn't expect us to return to the hotel so soon. The sounds of chairs being moved and doors opening were all their customers going in and leaving the place. The voices reciting the Quran were indeed theirs as well. I felt actually a bit braver when my mom told me they were Muslims like us. They prayed and recited the Quran, and probably they're even more devout than us. After learning this, I changed the position of my bed. Before, my feet were actually near the study table, but now I put my head there out of respect. I didn't want to rearrange the furniture for fear of disturbing their home. The sand at the door and the hair turned out to be remnants of incense. The Bunian family had scattered it, supposedly to scare us away, so we would move. But Encik Zainal said not to worry, they wouldn't bother us again. I'm not sure what agreement was meant, but apparently they had intended to keep scaring us until we gave in. Thank goodness we acted quickly. As for the shadow Ira saw, we don't really know what it was because my mom didn't say anything about it. Maybe it was also the Bunian family or the restaurant's customer. Encik Zainal mentioned if I wanted, he could relocate the Bunian family elsewhere, but I would have to arrange it with the hostel and the uni, and since it would involve moving all of them from the hostel, and due to my demanding nature of my studies, I forgot to handle it. Besides, they never bothered me, so I wouldn't want to disturb them. Later on, it turns out that the area where they live was originally forest before the hostel was built. Since there was nowhere else for them to go, they had taken refuge in our hostel, including the one I stayed in. I completed my second semester as usual. The sounds were still there, whether you heard them or not. If you are a deep sleeper, you will notice. And in the following semester, I moved off campus. So I don't know what happened to the hostel, nor the Bunian family after that. Well, that's all the stories for this episode. If you like it, again, I would really appreciate if you could subscribe and like this video. Well, until the next time, I'm Kim from Creepy with Coffee.